Thank you very much. Wow. I like that response. I don't get that in LA as much. That's nice. Thank you.
Well, welcome to Script to Screen Bombshell. Our audience got a chance to watch Bombshell. Thank you so much to Lionsgate. They let us watch the movie a month before its release for our Santa Barbara patrons. Our guest tonight directed the Austin Powers trilogy, Meet the Parents. Emmys for Recounting Game Change, Sarah Palin's story. He also took on Hollywood blacklisting with the movie Trumbo and explored the passage of civil rights in the movie All the Way starring Bryan Cranston. But more importantly, today he directed Bombshell, a film that tells the story of the women of the Fox News Channel who took on an organization that not only covered up sexual harassment, facilitated it, and also, I think more importantly, lets the audience feel the experience of what it's like to be sexual harassed, put it in the character's mind. So thanks so much for coming back for your third time.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I always like talking here.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning.
There's a reason. This crowd is so, I love this.
Let's go back to the beginning of the process. Charles Randolph wrote this as a spec script, and for yours who don't know, that's someone who tries to write a script in hopes of selling it. It found its ways to Charlize Theron. This was before the Me Too scandal and the Harvey Weinstein. So, Jay, what made you want to come on this project when Charlize approached you?
You know, one slight adjustment to that. I think he sold it on a spec pitch, and Annapurna bought it, and he wrote it on commission for Annapurna, which is a little different from actually taking a shot to write out the whole script and then going to try to sell it. But it happened. He wrote it right after he set it up. Right after it happened. He finished it a year and some months later, got it to Charlize. She sort of wondered if she could do it for a while, and she and I had been working on a TV show together. Loved collaborating with her. She's just a fantastic storyteller. You could tell she was a great producer, even though we didn't get to make that show. And she sent me the script just to ask what I thought about it, and really kind of wondering if I had any thoughts on whether she should do it. And I gave her a lot of notes just as a friend, and said she should definitely do it because we can talk about what I thought was just compelling about it. And she liked the notes, and on that call, and I still to this day, she's always funny about, I don't know if she knew she was going to do this on the call, but she asked me to direct it on the call, which was not part of the pretense of the call, the auspices of the call, and I said yes right away. And yeah, then I wondered, oh my God, why? I really didn't believe. I don't know why. I just didn't think I would be at the top of Charlize Theron's list for anything. That much less. I mean, I worked with her as a TV person, but I don't know why. She just seemed like such a different stratosphere, and she had some instinct that it might work out. The thing I said to her that I pitched to her as a reason is I thought, despite she was just not sure how she would connect. She knew she had a lot of differences politically with Megyn Kelly, and took a lot of issue with some things that Megyn Kelly had said and stood for. For me, growing up, I grew up in a conservative family in New Mexico. My dad was a defense industry worker, very hawkish, and a lot of people in my family are very, very conservative, former Texans, but in New Mexico. And I just thought I would like to make a film about sexual harassment that my family would watch, where they probably wouldn't watch a film that was driven by feminists or progressives And because of Megyn Kelly and Gretchen Carlson and other women they might recognize, I thought, well, I might actually be interested in this. So I said, Charlize, it's a chance to broaden this conversation. And I said to her too, she said, I'll do it if you direct it. And I said, well, I'm not directing it unless you partner up, really partner up with me as a producer. Because there's no way I'd get away with just being, like a male-centric, driver of this project. And I needed her to have that, to connect to that point of view of what it's like being a woman experiencing this and coping with it. And so we both sort of agreed to have each other's to have each other's backs, but also to keep each other honest about politics, sexual politics, all that stuff. And it was an incredible coming together over this. And by the way, over this great script. The script was excellent from the get-go. And she knew that, even though she was hesitant about the part, it was a really well-written script by Charles Randolph.
So what? So we'll talk a little about, because we know she's a terrific actress. I mean, we'll talk a lot more about that a little later. But what did she do as producer to save the project? Because it's really behind the scenes, as her producer mind is the one that made this happen.
Yeah. Oh man. Not only she brought us together, obviously, Annapurna, Charles, myself, and then helped connect with the various other actors that got interested in it right away. She knew Nicole. She knew Margot. I kind of brought John in because I had worked with him before, but I think many of the other stars, especially, she would make those calls, which are, hard to it's hard to get people on the phone, and Charlize can get people on the phone. And she also, I always talk about having produced some films that I don't direct. The biggest part of producing is keeping films together, and there's so much entropy and outward forces to blow up films and make people want to, it's just hard to keep it together. And she became that nucleus, that gravity at the center of it that everybody seemed to want to orbit, and whenever there was pressure, and the biggest pressure, which was widely reported at the time, is 2 weeks before we started shooting, Annapurna pulled out, just completely pulled out all, financing, distribution. We were shooting in 2 weeks. I had this whole cast. I mean, the list of incredible cast members, they were almost already all in place. We had a great script. We had agreed upon a budget. We were still at that budget. It was reported that there was a budget issue, but I feel like that might have been somebody trying to come up with a story that explained what happened, but it was definitely not budget. We were exactly what we were greenlit at. And Charlize called her reps, called everybody she knew. She'd worked with Braun Studios. Braun had already come in for a little tiny bit of backstop financing, but she got Aaron Gilbert, who runs Braun, to agree to cash flow while we were just figuring out who could be our new studio. And within 72 hours, the team, all of us, talking about really with Charlize's leadership, and again that nucleus, that centered thing of like, we're just going to do this. Like, it's not possible to stop us. That was Charlize, and she's fierce, and we got it together within 72 hours, hit our start date, hit our wrap date, finished every day early, kept all those actors, kept all the incredible crew. I mean, there's Colleen Atwood, the incredible Academy Award-winning costume designer, Barry Ackroyd, who shot many great films, like a ton of incredible, the entire Coen Brothers production team, line producer, first AD, UPM, coordinators, the whole production unit were all Coen. These are people who could do any other film today. They could have stopped our film right then and just said, you know what, looks kind of iffy. How many films have survived having the entire everything pulled out from under them 2 weeks before shooting? None that I know of. And they all hung with us. And again, I credit the producing of Charlize.
The main thing about her is, and we know we flipped to the actress side. I mean, have you seen the movie Monster, her Oscar winner? I mean, she has a tendency, she has her own persona, but it's stripped away. You don't see and I saw the same thing for this movie, where I didn't see a shred of Charlize. I saw the character she created. But what was it like developing the character with her? Because Megyn Kelly is not embraced by everybody. Like, how did she approach drawing this character for her?
Well, there's a little more of her in this character, and she's said this in some of the Q&As she's done, is that she had so many places of difference, but some of the key elements she really related with a woman who's strong and who's opinionated and who is kind of intense sometimes and gets labeled for being ambitious and all those things as having sharp elbows. I remember hearing that phrase, sharp elbows, all the time talking about Megyn and the research. And if that was a man, it wouldn't be called sharp elbows. It would just be called like, oh, the guy's tough and strong and so Charlize liked connecting with that and having something. She found things in common with her is the real answer. She found a lot of things that she had in common with her. And I almost feel like so much so that she had to make sure she could convince herself when she looked in the mirror there was a big difference, you know, and so that was why we changed her face. You know, she wanted to try pretty extensive prosthetics to kind of shapeshift herself into Megyn Kelly, and the way she put it, I really liked. It was so specific, and I was like, oh, of course we're going to do this, because there's a lot of reasons not to do that. It's really time-consuming for the shoot day. It's a 2.5-hour minimum time in the chair. It's a tremendous amount of time in prep, testing all the different makeup looks, and it can be very uncomfortable. You can shut you down because you can, you know, I've had this happen on the comedies where the prosthetics will get sweaty and come apart, and then you have to, it's just like slow. It's just slow, right? So as a director, you're kind of going, oh, she looks a lot like her already. Do I really need any prosthetics? And she said, I'm going to nail her accent. I'm going to get her accent down. I'm going to get her vibe down. I'm going to get her body language down. But if I do all that and I look in the mirror and all that's coming out of me and it's my face, it's just not going to work for me, for her as a performer. Just that the performance would feel weird to her. I want to look in there. I want to look at myself in the mirror and see Megyn Kelly. Boom. We just committed to it, you know, on the spot and said, okay, let's get into it. And we got this world-class prosthetics guy, makeup designer, Kazuhiro, and he did Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, and he's phenomenal. My favorite thing about him is he retires after every film. And so the lore is, yeah, we got him out of retirement, and he came out. That's what happened. He was retired, supposedly. We had to go and really lean on him, you know, to get him out. I was like, that is so smart. I'm going to retire after every film. That's a good move. But he's brilliant, and he got her and John Lithgow to those places where they got to, and that's incredible makeup.
Obviously, she's a gateway to the movie. She opens up where she talks to the audience through the fourth wall. You're using Big Short. Takes us through the Fox News channel doing this story. How is it for you using that as your opening to kind of blend this comedy and drama mixing with this kind of style?
That's a really good question. Tone was tough on this to figure out, and that was not always the opening. That used to come, I think about, I don't know, I think it's scene 44 on the script list of 250 scenes. And we moved it up for two reasons. One, to set the tone, and to put it with titles always gives you a little bit of license to be more stylized when you're running it under the title. So it was playing later, but it was sort of it was very Big Short. You know, Charles Randolph, their screenwriter, wrote The Big Short, so that was clearly part of the heritage of the style, but it felt a little smartassy, too much, like to just stop and do it. And because of those films have done it, especially Big Short, but other films since and before too. I watched Thank You for Smoking recently, and I was like, wow, Jason Reitman was on this vibe a long time before. And it just didn't feel quite, and Charles was with me the whole time, so it wasn't me overruling his script, it was him going, yeah, I think we need to think about how to do less of that kind of so in your face of breaking the fourth wall, so stylized, since maybe it's not quite as fresh. And the performances were so good, we didn't really feel like we had to try so hard to be entertaining and kind of glib. And so we moved it up, but the second reason was that I've really come to appreciate what I, as a film watcher, I really love when the predicament is clear enough quite early. Like, I think I studied a lot of Hitchcock when I was doing in film school, just how quickly you go, wow, this is rough, and these characters are designed to clash in a certain way, and this is a real predicament. How's that going to work out? So for me, that having Megyn take Trump on in the primaries about how horribly, all the horrible things he'd said about women. She's the rising star at Fox. He's the new cash cow ratings guy for Fox. They're now at odds with each other. They're both in a predicament. She's especially in a predicament by taking him on. But maybe even more importantly, Fox is at a predicament, like which side are we going to go? And I remembered that when she did that. I was like, wow, That's just like everybody in the control room was like, what's she doing? Like, that is a big deal for their superstar to take on Donald Trump and accuse him of being that horrible to women and potentially put a chink in his armor, you know, in relation to Hillary and all, you know, like it was it was a big deal. So I thought that's a predicament. That's something I could start the movie with. And then the tour had always been tied to her because her giving the tour explains why she has to pay attention to Roger over how to handle the Trump thing. So it all kind of came up and clicked, and we've screened for months in old orders, different orders, and when that finally happened, the audience instantly felt like they were connecting to what we were up to a lot sooner, and it just got off to a rocky
You mentioned setting up the predicament earlier with Hitchcock. The Rudy Becker scene, which was funny, the internal monologue while she's being harassed, but you quickly see the consequences immediately after when she was fired.
Yeah, and mostly, I'm so gratified by the reaction to that scene. Women often come up to us and say, "Oh, I'm so glad someone is giving a voice to what that feels like, trying to placate." Her story is incredible, and I'll tell you a couple of details about it, but trying to placate some guy who has put himself too far out and put her in an impossible situation, but still she has to still play the game somehow to survive. And it's just so heartbreaking to watch her have to do that. But what I find so gratifying is men coming up to us, and often with the women saying, I'm so glad you made him watch that because now he knows what I face in these situations. Her story is so incredible. I'll just quickly just give you the highlights of it. I shot more of her story, but because she wasn't the main character of the film. So she's a rising star at Fox. She got a 3-year deal after having already proven herself at CNN. She's just out of UCLA when she gets that CNN job. She's an immigrant. She's fantastic on air. And because she's Persian, Iranian, she's sent into Middle Eastern war zones and is just great. She gets this 3-year contract. 6 months in, this guy hits on her in a hotel bar. She thinks she's there for a promotion. She doesn't even complain to Fox, but she tells her agent, he complains to Fox, and she's fired. And it's the end of her career. She was like going to be the next Christiane Amanpour. Like that's how people talked about her. She's never worked in broadcasting again. That was in 2006, right? 2006. So her story is so incredible, and it's just. And I've gotten to know her a little bit, and I'm just intensely moving. But that scene actually was contentious in early forms with some of our executives. Just wondered, is that really worth it? I'm like, I'm not making this film unless that scene's in. I was that intense about that.
And that also leads to Gretchen, because she's also now on the downside of her career, stuck on daytime. So how do you and Nicole work together, Nicole Kidman, to kind of create the character of, the fallen star? So
glad to talk about that because Gretchen has an NDA, right? She still has to honor it. She got a settlement. She got an apology, which was intense. That's why we make rare, and it was an intense fight to get it, and that she got it. But she also paid the ultimate price career-wise. Yes, she had been somewhat relegated to a slightly less, but she was a broadcaster. And then because she started to complain about the way men were treating her, she gets fired, sues, jumps off that cliff, and gets the settlement, but can't talk about it, right? We didn't know when we made the film how much this was going to be so on the surface. Ronan Farrow's great book about the Weinstein thing and how his stuff was all suppressed at NBC has now led to NBC letting all the accuser women out of their NDAs. And now Gretchen herself has asked Fox to do the same just the past couple of weeks, right? And forced NDAs and forced arbitration are the absolute worst set of conditions for someone who has to experience harassment because there's just no good recourse. You're probably not going to win because in forced arbitration it always slightly favors the corporation as compared to a jury trial, and you're going to be stuck signing some kind of NDA which prevents you from warning other women about the harassment. So it's like the perfect storm of, I won't swear, but it was the perfect storm of badness, and so It was, yeah, so I didn't know, and the ending of the film was not originally ending with her saying, yeah, you won all this, you got the apology, but you're going to be muzzled. And she says, maybe. That was not the end of the script. That's the end we got to, again, through trying a lot of different things. It's also a great tribute to Nicole Kidman. She's so smart. Because she signed an NDA, we didn't get her story. We got Megan's story through her own book and a bunch of other accounts. Sure. Gretchen's story couldn't be captured in detail because she couldn't talk to us. We tried, and she just couldn't do it, right? So we had to figure it out. Well, Nicole, just great character design and character intuition, just kept saying, I think you need more, I think you need more. And Charles kept going back and writing new stuff for her. And in the scene where she says, they'd say, I jumped off a cliff, why wouldn't women support me? I can't call Megan because I wouldn't take her call. Roger pits us again. We shot that about 2 months ago or 3 months ago. I don't know. Like that was a one-day reshoot, all pushed by Nicole because she just said, I think Gretchen is so righteous in what she did and jumped and really risked everything. And I don't think you're telling that clearly enough. So that's all of how good Gretchen's arc through the whole story is. It was always good in the script, but a huge amount of it was because Nicole Kidman said, I just think you should keep going. That's how the whole movie worked. I had these fantastic, Charles and I are men, we get so much, but only so much, you know, and the rest of it was relying on incredible women collaborators who pushed us and tested us and made us answer for everything we were trying to do, and that was a great example of Nicole doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the scene where Gretchen's with the lawyers and we're seeing the clips of her being sexually harassed on air in front of millions of viewers really affected me. And the quotes, this gave a very visceral reaction with the audience. What was the challenges of creating the sequence? Because you mix archival footage and this to try to tell that part of the story.
We had a huge head start on that because the internet had created a meme for us of a montage of those clips plus a bunch of other ones, and it struck me that you could just it's what she would play, to her lawyers. She was in this scene. She's trying to convince those two great lawyers to get on her case. I mean, to support her case, and so of course that's what she would play is the sort of montage of it. And once we locked in on which segments of the kind of the stuff that had been around on the internet, you can, using fair use protection, you can use clips like that without permission and without paying for them. But the trick was we had to stick Nicole Kidman into those scenes. In the original draft, Charles had an interesting idea of like showing actors playing them when they weren't on camera, but when you cut to footage, it would still be the real people. And I was like, I think it'll be really interesting to have Nicole pasted in there. And I'd already done quite a bit of that in the Sarah Palin movie where I had Julianne Moore as Sarah Palin talking to Katie Couric from archival footage or Brian Gibson from archival footage. And I've done it quite a bit on films. And you actually can do that as long as you're faithful to the original intent of the clip, what the clip was and what it represented and when it was actually recorded at the time of the Sarah Palin campaign or Megan taking on Donald Trump, or in this case, Fox and Friends. As long as you're not misusing it in a kind of deep fake way. I'd never heard of the phrase of deep fake until when we were doing it before. But now people can manipulate footage and make it say something it's not meant to say. That does not protected by fair use. If you get into that and you're starting to mess with it, then you would be vulnerable to a pretty serious lawsuit. And so that was the issue. I've incredible, same VFX guy I've had forever, Dave Johnson from Pacific Vision, done every film I've ever done. And now we've gotten kind of good at this one particular thing. We know how to stage it, the green screen, how to set it all up, how to match the lenses, match all the lighting, match everything. And it's not that hard, but it's not quite as straightforward as you think. And Dave made it easy.
Now, Kayla, played by Margot Robbie, is a composite character of a few women. I found it fascinating. She's an evangelical Christian who's so sexually open-minded, just wants to voice the conservatives' heard, fresh and ambitious, but she doesn't know she's walking the lion's den, even though Gretchen warns her.
Yeah.
What was the approach to developing the character with Margot?
So Charles had done some amount of research and had written the scenes pretty similar to how they ended up turning out. I really wanted to go in and talk to as many actual people from Vox confidentially as we possibly could. And Margot, when I met with Margot, a lot of her questions were, how, why is she like this? And Margot is such a nerd. She doesn't seem like someone who would be a nerd, but she's a full-on nerd. She has every page cornered, all these colorful little tabs on the side. She's gotten every line broken down. She does all the backstory in her mind, even if there's not enough. And she just kept asking questions from me and Charles about where she came from and who she was based on. She then extends forward. She said she knows what Kayla's doing at age 60. Like she knows her whole life. I was like, who are you? Why are you making me pay attention to all this? And because that's what gave her the specificity, the heart of it, the price she had to pay by being, sort of not getting what she was walking into, all those things. And that was really what she did to prepare, was she just talks about it. I don't really rehearse. I don't block scenes in prep. We do block them out. We do run through them once we have the sets and the props and everything that you need to figure out where things should go. But I love to talk through the scenes in great detail, answer everyone's questions. And she just went deep into it. And on that day, this is one interesting thing about how that scene was shot, was that we started shooting with a style where the cameras are shooting opposite each other. Very often you shoot one direction, sometimes with multiple cameras, and then turn around and shoot, the other direction, because it's usually the case that lighting only looks good from one direction. So you put the camera where, when I used to teach cinematography at USC, and I would always say, okay, the first decision, where's the camera, where are the actors? Light to that, because the direction of the light only matters in relation to where the camera angle is. So, but Barry Ackroyd does this a lot as a former documentarian, and I really wanted to do this too, which is light it so it looks good from every direction, but especially from the other side of the axis between, if we're here, the key lights are behind us, and in this case we're lit from the front, but in most of the scenes where we're doing this, the cameras are here, but the lights are on the other side, and so you have a back cross key situation in which your backlight is my key light. Anyway, technical, but but what that means practically is everybody's on camera all the time. There's no kind of off energy acting when you're off camera, which actors, even the great actors, sometimes save it for when they're on camera, right? And so they're sort of giving the other actor that's on camera some rhythm, but sometimes the rhythm's off because of that, and you're just tearing your hair out going, why isn't this working? And then you cut it together and it works great, but in this case you could see it live. It was like being in a play, and on that scene, unlike most of my other scenes, I used to be a camera operator, not a great one, but I was an okay one, and I wanted to not have Margot have to go through that so many times, so I said, let's shoot a third camera so I don't have to back up and shoot that. I like starting from the inside, which is also a little unconventional. Start tight and get wider. Don't make Margot have to go through this a bunch of times by having to shoot these two cameras and then shoot it all again from some wide angle. Just give me the camera, I'll operate the wide shot. And so I was in that room with, when she walks up and turns around, I'm the camera that's looking past her towards Roger, but I'm also the camera that's doing the wide geography shot, which turned out to be really important because the distance between them is really interesting and that composition is so important. I was so caught up in the scene, I think on the first take I forgot to recompose. I'm not looking at Barry, the DP, like, oh, great idea, have the director operate the camera. But I did, and then I kept, and that way we could reduce the amount of time she had to go through that. And it was so intense and upsetting. This sounds sappy and, I don't know if the right word is just kind of, it was sometimes a very sappy set anyway, because everyone was helping each other cope with it. But that day, everyone just started hugging and saying, "It's okay, are you okay? I'm okay. Are you okay?" Like, it was really hard to experience that And I think it puts the audience members, especially men who don't have any idea what that feels like, in that room. And, I felt like as a man, I thought I understood more of this than I realized I did. And that scene, even for me in that room, even though I knew exactly what was coming, was devastating and eye-opening. And that scene is really probably the most important scene in the whole film.
And did John have any concerns, Lithgow, about how to play that scene?
He did, mostly just he knew he was going to be a horrible person, and have to come out. So he talked to the women beforehand and explained, I'm going to come at you, but, just keep in mind, John Lithgow in here, it's not, he's like the nicest guy on earth, John Lithgow. So he knew it was going to be dark, and he tried to reassure them, but they, of course, good actors know, the more conflict, the more you're believable as my opposing force, my antagonist, the better. The stronger you are, the more intense. And what I love about how Roger is portrayed is that, and John got to this probably even more than we had planned, was how everybody we talked to, no matter what your politics, said that Roger Ailes is one of the most charming, sometimes most generous, sometimes most coaching, mentory type guys you could ever meet. So it made the predation all the more dramatically, affecting and creepy. And so I feel like you see him even laughing with Kayla so much at the beginning and kind of gets her jokes about Santa Claus and all that. And then even just the way he breathed while he was looking at her was, I don't know if I would have thought that was going to work. So it gave us a dynamic range to have him be so human, to then also go all the way to an almost Jabba the Hutt kind of monstrosity, towards the end.
And that, of course, leads to the scene with Megan and her, the confrontation. Someone should have warned us he was after more than legs. Yeah. How did you put that scene with Margot and Charlize? So that really both sets their paths for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and that's an interesting scene because it's also the biggest indictment, of Megan's character. But I think she even talked about it in her book. It's just a tough place for her. When she had been harassed 10 years earlier, and she'd kept it to herself because she thought for a long time that it was unique to her, right? And then now she's finding out, a lot of other women are coming up with this. But she still feels guilty and terrible about not having spoken up. So in a way, as much as that scene Margot gets all the emotion, it's really from Megan's point of view because this has come back to haunt her, this choice, right? And so that's how I asked Charlize to play it, is that you've been suppressing this ghost, this decision in a way, and you think that you can sort of exercise the ghost, the demon, by doing the right thing now, but it's still not gonna. It's still gonna come at you, and especially in the form of in the voice of a much younger woman who's taking this big risk and has a right to think that the generations before her would give her a clue, give her some help in navigating this. And it's again just great drama. They're both dynamics that Charles wrote they're both coming from such strong places, and so it's just an excellent clash, an excellent predicament just within that scene. And I didn't know, tonally, I didn't know how Margot was I didn't know how emotional she was gonna get because she has all these other emotional scenes to go still, But when she lost it, and she didn't mean to, she apologized after when she started crying, and because it wasn't in the plan. I said, "Oh my God, you don't have to apologize for that. That was incredible." And it ended up being because it just again puts more guilt on Megan, right? So it turned out to be.
And then you had the devastating moment where she's talking to Kate McKinnon and Jess on the phone, which was one of the most painful phone calls ever.
That's that was an amazing night. Margot did that in 2 takes, really a take and a half, because one of the cameras rolled out in a way on the second take, and that's just, it was that amazing and it turned out it was really good. It was because it started raining after that second take and we had to stop. That's all I got. She said, I could have kept doing it. I was like, I bet you could, but I don't want you to have to do that. And it's raining, so, and it was heartbreaking. Kate McKinnon, the night we shot at the restaurant outside on the street, Kate's in a little booth with sound blankets all around her, just inside the restaurant with the microphone, obviously, and we're playing we're playing her voice on speakers right next to, oh no, we're playing it into the phone, that's right. Playing Kate's voice into the phone to Margot, and I could hear that Kate was just totally, we'd already shot Kate's side, right? So she had been really emotional too when we shot her side, but now she was completely, just emotionally a wreck. She was sobbing, and so that's another example of, even though it wasn't that thing where they're both on camera, Kate McKinnon went to such an emotional space, also a place of guilt and shame that she didn't help her friend more earlier, that Margot was completely fueled by it. And it just, I don't know, I couldn't believe the level of emotion I was hearing through my headphones, but that I knew Margot was hearing. We were all breaking down at the monitors. We were all getting very emotional, just because Kate was losing it so much.
It must have been great, because Kate McKinnon is obviously very funny, can do improv, can read a script, but dramatic. It must have been great for you having that she had such a wide range for all your scenes.
Yeah, she's a great actor, and she has that range. I like to cast people who are capable of being funny in very dramatic places, because then you just love them all that much more from those scenes, like early in the bar and then in bed together. Margot, turns out, is a great comedian herself. She went right with Kate. I didn't know she could improvise as well as everything else she can do. She's a great improviser. She kept right up with Kate, and because we needed those scenes to be loose. Charles wrote great moments for them, but we wanted them to be actually flirting with each other and actually getting to know each other, and have it be plausible that this compartmentalized existence that Kayla is living, where she's sort of aware of her sexuality, but sort of not, and yet still works at Fox, is still a Christian, that we talked an awful lot about how a person like that would be, and it was just an incredibly good chemistry between the two of them, and if we didn't have that, that would have never been plausible. And Kate, and that's why I cast people like Mark Duplass and Rob Delaney as Gil, and trying to think of all the many other great actors. That almost every one of them has done comedy as well as drama, and I'm always quick to try to cast people who are comedy capable, even in a drama.
I also found it interesting, you have Charlize looking back at her daughters, Gretchen looking back at her daughters, but the scene that really hit me is when Charlize realized she's victim W with the alphabet.
Yeah.
Was that always how you wanted to kind of go, that was going to be the climax of your film, just that little note?
Yeah, and in real life, evidently Megan was one of the first people into Paul Weiss to kind of Pied Piper. So that's why we have her say, since I came and talked to you the first time, that, but since she did that first visit and was able to therefore reassure everybody to come in, she was super surprised that so many women came forward. There had been the 6 women who had worked with Roger pre-Fox, and that surprised everybody, but that was substantial. But people thought maybe there was 1 or 2 more. It's one of the great things about interviewing the real people. In the original script, the Murdochs were the one that gave Megan the names of the other women who might want to be called because they might have stories. We interviewed some people who had worked there, and they said, no, it wasn't the Murdochs. There was a woman who still works at Fox while we were shooting. She still works there, so we can't tell you who she is. She's vulnerable. But there was a woman at Fox who'd kept a list of people that even slightly had a hint of having been harassed by Roger, because she herself had also been harassed. And she, like Megan, thought she might be the only person, but she had a list of people that if anybody actually is willing to come out and talk, I'm going to go talk to all these women right away. So it was a very interesting, and it was the weather lady. That's how that part of the story. So we found out it was the weather lady. Then while we were shooting, we heard that the weather lady, Janice Dean, who we can now name because she wrote a book that came out in post-production while we were. So we sneak her name in. We found out about her right before, and we shot one take where we used her name in case that happened. The rest of the time we kept her anonymous to protect her. Then it announced she came out with a book. Then she did come out with a book, and it detailed what happened. So we were able to give a woman credit that she wasn't going to get for doing this. One of the few ways that the women supported each other at that time was the weather lady, who Charlize points out, Megan points out, they confided in the weather lady because no one thought she was going to take their job, which is such an amazing, weird irony of the situation.
I found the loyalty scene where they're all wearing the Team Roger t-shirts pretty funny. Can we remind me of the president who demands loyalty? As we know, the Fox News Channel is the infomercial network for the White House. My question is, what was your concern about how much...
No politics here, right?
No, sorry, Ken.
No.
What were your concerns about how much to infuse Trump into the story? Like, how much did you want too much, too little?
That's a really good question. It was always in the script, and again, once I chose to move that scene up and start the movie with it, it was going to be pretty central. There was even more of it. We at one time thought about putting the Billy Bush tape in the credits, the grab him by the pussy scene, because we had that footage, and we thought, well, that would be such a dark way to remind people that all came out, and that there was such a relationship throughout that whole year from 2015 when she busts him for all the horrible things he said in the primaries all the way to 2016 when Roger's fired for similar behavior, and yet Roger has backed Trump pretty intensively by the fall of 2016, and there's a singularity. And we were talking about this just before. I've started to think about the problem of the pattern of men in powerful situations becoming so entitled to loyalty, and by loyalty they mostly mean power loyalty, as in you work for me, I help you, but you do everything I want, and you continuously back me no matter what, and stick to my programs. In Roger's case, speak the words I give you, don't question too much, look the way I want you to look. He actually did micromanage their looks. The dressing room scene is based on reality. There was actually a few women who told us that I never could tell if we didn't put it in the script because I couldn't tell if it was kind of lore to back the story, but there was someone that they called the skirt Nazi, who would require women to keep their skirts a certain, to make them shorter. Not in most dress codes, it's always about don't let your skirt get too short. And at Fox, it was don't let your skirt get too long. And so the dressing room is based. That was all. It's all part of this kind of egocentric. It's not nearly as much about sex, the id, to misuse a kind of pop psychology version of Freudian terms, but it's not id. It's ego. Because once the egotistical, narcissistic personality is at the center of that, then there's this entitlement thing, and you see it with Harvey's stuff. Reading that Ronan book and the She Said, the Megan Twohey and Jodi Kantor book, and hearing about all the way these patterns go, to me the thing that's consistent, and Trump too, is the sort of bottomless pit ego that needs to consume and needs power, and when a person like that doesn't get power, I'm special, so I deserve power. Wait, you're not giving me everything I want, including sexual favors? That's your problem. Now I'm going to, punish you and smear your character, assassinate your character, and demote you. All the things and it's so consistent, and I just am astonished. And so anyway, long answer to that's why Trump and Ailes are overlapped in the story.
Well, I mean and it was interesting with the triumphant ending where, we see the women win, but actually Ailes and O'Reilly made more money than the women's victims.
Yeah.
Was there any concerns with how to end that?
We went through a lot of versions of what the text cards could be, because they're important. We found actually I like to screen the movie a lot. I like to see what people react to, what feels, in that case, what's the cathartic way to button this. And we tried much more detailed, sort of where are they now, text cards, and they always seemed reductive compared to the layers and that Charles came up with in the script and that the actors got to. They seemed simplistic. So we used to have, I think we had I think the most cards we ever had were 6, but they were always very specific about what happened to each person. And I just wanted it to be, you have to think about where each person, you can look, I hope people go and look them all up on the internet. I hope you can provide your own, because there's much more. And I just think reducing it to too simplistic of a thing. But I thought something that has a dark irony to it, like that payment thing, was, that's not trying to wrap up the meaning of the entire film. It's just pointing out this one thing. And then also, really importantly, to remind people, which I think we may all forget, that this happened a year before the Harvey news broke. Gretchen Carlson sued Roger Ailes, the most powerful media titan maybe ever, a year before, and had really no chance of any wave. I think she did think it would happen, but no wave of women came and supported her, partly because the women who would were not Fox watchers. And so she stepped out on her own. Then the other women do join her, but that was a year before. So we wanted to remind people that at the end of the movie, how risky that move was, how unlikely it was that they would succeed, and that we thought was worth stating as an actual text thing.
Well, we do have time for a couple of questions.
Hi. So I was just wondering, I noticed that the film had a very documentarian style throughout, not only with the cinematography, but also with the voiceover from our 3 main characters. So I was wondering what really pushed you to craft the whole film in that direction.
Yes. That's a good question. It's interesting you say the voiceovers, because I see the voiceovers as the style of the shooting is definitely documentarian, but I feel like the voiceovers made the internal monologues, which you don't get in documentaries very often, more cinematic, more dramatic. The reason we went for the documentary style is partly, I guess, because it's a style I've worked with in most of my, certainly in Recount and Game Change. I just like the feeling of being in the room. I often actually would pitch these movies when I was trying to set them. I just want to be in the room where they made that choice to get Sarah Palin, and then realized, oh my God, what have we done? And that the camera is almost meant to just be, it's very much a Barry Ackroyd and Paul Greengrass. There was a movie called Bloody Sunday, which I always used, and United 93, and a bunch of other movies he does, where the camera's there, but it's almost like it didn't get the press pass to be in the perfect position. It had to find some place, and shoot from almost a camouflage place, and you do feel like, as you do in good documentaries, that the actors, the subjects of the documentaries, and in our case the actors, forget that the cameras are there, and so it is a fly on the wall kind of vibe. It's not so much a mind's eye things, which I think there's a whole other way of shooting that I haven't done very much of. I'm trying to think of what films I might have done that a little more, where the camera placement is positioned to represent the psychology of the point of view, the actual subjective camera, I guess you would call it. And in this case, I wanted objective, but the feeling sometimes, just like in the great documentaries, and Barry Ackroyd, is that all that operating in the elevator, being on Megan, over Margot, and then just getting to rack focusing exactly. That's just, we didn't plan that. That's just Barry, the operator, figuring out from feeling the scene where to go. That feels less stagey and more like something is really happening in front of you and you kind of lose track of it. And it's just a style that it feels more authentic somehow. I knew some of the film would be stylized, but I wanted the camera work to seem alive and spontaneous, and that the experience would be very much about putting the audience in their point of view and feel like you're experiencing it from Margot's character's point of view, for example, in that scene. So that's kind of what I was thinking when we did. And again, if you shoot this way, you can. Everybody's on all the time. The lighting people and the set dressers are in such hell because I'm going to shoot. They don't know where I'm going to shoot, and they don't know where Barry's going to suddenly decide. He would very often shoot over the back of someone and find expressiveness in the way, So that means the camera might be, so everything had to be dressed all the time. no video monitors or what, like things had to really be hidden, so you could just, the actors could just feel like, oh, I'm here and everything I do is live, and that made it better.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. So my question feeds right into that is, in dressing the set and also addressing how the actors are portraying these real characters, save for Kayla, how did you go about coaching them on their appearance or their interpretation of the characters' voices and body movements? And then did you have legal issues getting the right to use the logo for Fox on everything?
Yeah. So on coaching them to channel their characters and then to also present the exterior of the characters, that's all them. I just say anything you need, any accent coach you want, any prosthetic person you want, we had the incredible hair people. Margot's hair is never Margot's hair. Every single bit of her hair are wigs, right? Which I never see we never even had, usually are going in and touching up and digitally to hide wig. Our hair people were extraordinary, and Morgan was the hair lady. And the wardrobe, Colleen Atwood, she not only was trying to match, she was just trying to push it just a little more towards expressing each character, and she just nailed every single, and also made the fat suit for John and designed all his, but a lot of that just came, one, because that we had done so much research and it was pretty easy to know what we were reaching for. But you never want to make matching the thing. You want to get there and push for it, but if you get so obsessed with it, it can trip you up because you start to get perfectionist about, let's say, an accent, so much so that it's tough to perform because you're mimicking and you don't want to do a caricature. So it's always a very interesting decision. How far do you go to matching? We had a really interesting dilemma about that in the Bill O'Reilly character. So that is so close that lawyers were nervous about how close we got to matching Bill O'Reilly. Maybe a little bit on Geraldo too, which I was really happy we did that. And I so love when people cut to Rudy, the insanity of that. So, I think audiences enjoy that you went there and they enjoy, since you're making a film that's based on reality, that you took that seriously, but they also really want the actors to come through that and to add life and soul and layers. And if you restrict them too much to the match, you can outsmart yourself and really mess up what the actor can do. In terms of the legal thing, what was the legal question again?
The Fox News logo.
Oh, Fox News logo. Yeah. So in that fair use thing that I was describing, which is an interesting legal area, are any lawyers in the room, particularly anybody who knows about fair use? It's an interesting thing, and I don't know how it evolved. I'd love to know the history of it, but it is for documentarians, for comedians. When we're doing Borat or SNL, or you can, in parody, you're especially protected, and you can use a lot of fair use. But any film that has a demonstrable social value, a benefit that comes from making the film, if you choose to use some footage from Fox and you want to recreate Fox, you actually have to match everything, including logos, including graphics, including things that are totally protected by copyright in every other situation except this weird umbrella protection you get from fair use. One of the trickiest exceptions to the exception is music. It's very difficult to fair use music. I don't know how it is that the control of music, some great lawyers for musicians over time, for songwriters and composers, have found ways to make it much tougher to sort of become benign pirates, or pirates for good, to take things through fair use. But you have to, logos, in the first film, Recount, we sometimes would try to, what they call Greek out the logos and fake them. And by the time I did this Game Change, they said, no, you have to match it. You have to use the real Fox logo. You have to recreate the history of it. In our film, there are dozens of monitors in every shot on the newsroom. Almost every moment, those are the actual scenes that were, the actual news broadcasts that were going at that date that were the scene. So we had to put all that in. That wasn't just magically showing up just because we were recreating July 15th of 2016. You know, whatever was happening on July 15th, we had this giant document that nearly killed all of us. We called it the Megalodon, or the Meg for short. And wherever we were in the scene, we would say, okay, on this monitor, and there would be this whole stack of things, and we had it all, you know, banked up in computers to feed to all those different monitors. But we had to match all that. So we had to either, in some cases, we were recreating it with our own actors and putting them into the shows they would have been doing, Gretchen Carlson, and in other cases, we were taking other footage that had other newscasters and just making sure we had the right ones up. And if it was wrong, it would be problematic. So it was imperative that we become good pirates.
Well, I mean, Bombshell, the terrific film, has given voice to the women's experience with sexual harassment, but I think more importantly, makes the audience understand and feel, which is a thing I have not seen on the screen before.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming back and sharing this film with us.
Thank you.